If a squirrel waits near your door, the reason may be quieter than you think. It may not be asking to come inside at all. Often the door is not the prize. It is the signal. A backyard squirrel does not see a porch the way we do. To the squirrel, this is a route, a clock, and a warning system. The first meaning is routine recognition. If the same door makes the same sounds every morning, a squirrel can notice. A tiny sound indoors can travel farther than you expect, but noticing a door is not the same as trusting it. Sometimes it is waiting for the yard to become still again. When nothing moves, curiosity gets one careful step. A porch can become a landmark, just like a tree stump or fence corner. If the feeder is often filled after the door opens, the door becomes part of the food pattern. The squirrel may be waiting for the moment after the human leaves, but food is only one possible reason. A porch can also be a safe edge between open yard and cover. Squirrels rarely ignore the route behind them. Watch the tail before you guess what the squirrel wants. It can look like begging, but the posture tells another story. A wild squirrel can learn your routine and still want a safe gap. One clue is what happens just before the squirrel appears. The door may be only the last step in a chain. Squirrels are famous for remembering places, not just food. A step, a pot, a fence corner, and a tree trunk can become a memory system. Look for the tiny evidence around the waiting spot. Even when the squirrel is gone, the porch can show its routine. The route often matters as much as the door. Fence lines are squirrel roads. If the route feels unsafe, the waiting can stop instantly. So the door is a clue, but never the whole story. Another clue is whether it happens at the same time each day. Some squirrels arrive before the queue, not after it. Then one small change confirms the pattern. But if the routine changes, the squirrel's behavior changes too. Season can change the meaning of the wait. In colder weather, the porch may simply be a predictable shelter edge. On hot days, shade can be part of the answer. The best clue is what the squirrel does next. If it leaves for a tree instead, the meaning may be safety. If it digs nearby, the door may be a landmark. Door, feeder, tree, planter, fence. The pattern is in the combination. A calm wait and a nervous wait look different. A lifted paw often means the squirrel has not decided yet. If the next step goes backward, it was caution. If the next step goes sideways, it may be checking the route. A squirrel can look at one thing and listen to another. The human routine can matter even when the human never notices the squirrel. Sometimes the cue is not the door itself, but an object near it. If the sound changes, the squirrel may hesitate. Sound, timing, and familiar objects can all point to the same door. Another meaning is simple. The squirrel is waiting for you to stop moving. That wait can happen from a porch step, a fence rail, or a shrub. The safest waiting spot is usually the one with the quickest exit. If the gap disappears, the squirrel disappears too. The kindest thing is often to walk quietly from inside. Sometimes the waiting spot is tied to water, not food. A waiting squirrel is reading the whole backyard. From the squirrel's height, even a tiny door gap can be huge. Sometimes the squirrel is near the door because the route passes there. Notice whether it stops, looks, listens, or simply passes through. It does not mean the squirrel should be invited closer. Hand feeding can blur the safe wild distance. If you feed birds, keep the routine away from the doorway. A healthy squirrel is still looking for its own options. Not every squirrel in the yard will read the door the same way. One squirrel may be bold because the route has worked before. Sometimes one squirrel watches another squirrel's success. But a popular route can also create tension. The waiting squirrel may leave because another squirrel owns the route that morning. The answer is usually a pattern, not a single emotion. Tomorrow morning, look for the first clue before the squirrel arrives. First, notice where it comes from. Second, notice where its body points. Third, watch the tail after a sound. Fourth, follow the next move. If it leaves instead, the cue may have failed. The pattern becomes clear when you watch the whole route. Once you see the pattern, the waiting looks different. For the squirrel, the door may be more like a clock than a doorway. It can also be a warning system, and sometimes it is simply a landmark in a very good memory. Or it may be the safest edge between open yard and cover. The clue is never just the sitting, it is the sequence. If it waits, then heads to the feeder. It may know your refill rhythm. If it waits, then retreats. It may be measuring safety. If it waits, then digs. The door may be a landmark. If it waits in the same shadow, the porch may be shelter. If it does not look at the door at all, it may just be passing through. The longer you watch quietly, the clearer the meaning becomes. The most important part is that the squirrel is still choosing for itself. So when a squirrel waits near your door, start with curiosity, not a conclusion. Look for time, sound, route, body angle. and what it does next. The magic is not that it wants to be human. The magic is that it has learned your backyard, and every wait is a small decision. The old porch step may be part of that decision every morning. Tomorrow, the same scene may happen again. This time, you know to watch the sound before the movement, and if it chooses to leave, that is part of the answer too. If it comes back, it is returning to a pattern, not asking for a favor. So what does it mean? It means the squirrel has noticed a useful pattern. It may mean food timing, safety, shelter, memory, or simple curiosity. It usually does not mean it wants to come inside. Watch from a distance, and the story gets better. Your own backyard may have a pattern just like this. The next time a squirrel waits near your door, look for the clue behind the pause. Have you seen a squirrel wait near your porch, window, feeder, or door? Tell us where it waited and what it did next. Because in a squirrel's world, a small pause can tell a big backyard story. What has a squirrel taught you about your own backyard routine?